Hello, and thank you for joining us for our fourth and final Natural Life Transition webinar. As you might know, this is a four-part series, and we appreciate your taking the time to kind of explore ways that you can take a positive step in managing this time in your life. My name is Kristen Smith, and I am the Outreach Coordinator for Oakdale OBGYN. I'm joined by my technical consultant, Andy Meyer. We will be helping to moderate our webinar this evening. And if there are any questions, we're going to save them to the end. I wanted to introduce our topic tonight is about finding center. It's balancing mood and mind. And in this webinar, we're going to talk about a lot of different topics related to our emotional and mental health, related to menopause and perimenopause. Our presenter is going to touch on acceptance, letting go, and curbing the negative chatter inside our head. So it's going to be, I don't know, the best of all things is that our guest expert is also going to give us some tools to help us find balance in the midst of all of this. The handouts are going to be available on our website for download and also in the chat box. We're recording this event so that if you need to check out or you want to share it with somebody else, you can find it on the website later on today or tomorrow. There's probably going to be a lot of questions, and if that's the case, we're going to save them to the end. I'll help to moderate them, or Patty can also access as well. And so with that, I'd like to introduce our presenter, transpersonal psychologist, Dr. Patty Hava. She brings more than 20 years of experience, study, and practice in the fields of transpersonal psychology and self-actualization. That's a hard word. She's retired from clinical practice, but has a 15-year history as a mental health professional and a clinical supervisor. And she holds certifications as a meditation instructor, an Ayurvedic wellness counselor, a yoga teacher, a Reiki practitioner, and an intrinsic coach. With a PhD in psychology, she serves as a professor and the assistant chair of transpersonal studies at Sophia University. Her research has been published in the International Journal of Transpersonal Psychology and the Journal of Humanistic Psychology, as well as in several books. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patty. Thanks, Patty.
Thanks, Kristen, for the great introduction. And thanks, Andy, for being here and just helping and doing your magic. I appreciate you both. Thank you. So welcome, everyone, to our topic for today about finding center and balancing mood and mind. So when Kristen asked me to kind of talk about this topic, particularly in the context of menopause and perimenopause, I actually got really excited. And I don't know that a lot of people get excited to talk about menopause, but I did because it's important. And it's something that for such a universal experience, if all women experience this, and yet it's not something that is talked about very much. So it's an experience that we often go through in this cloud of shame or secrecy. So it's really exciting to be able to talk about it and shed some light on this. So we hear the term menopause in such a negative context. So when you hear the word she's menopausal or she's going through menopause, or even your own menopausal experience, whether you've had it, are in it, or are anticipating it, what comes to mind? Like, first start thinking about the first images that you come to mind, but what you feel in your body. Do you feel contraction? Do you hold your breath? Do you roll your eyes and think, oh no, not that, right? We have these senses that it's something to avoid, something bad, something to dread or fear. You know, when I was looking to do this, I started looking for images, and the images that come up look like this, or they're like very strange. They look like women that are really tired, and the words dried up or moody or unstable or irrational seem to come up as keywords underneath some of these images also, which is a really unfortunate message. It's also inaccurate. So when we think about our mood and our mind and the thoughts that go through, we're also being aware of the messages that we're getting about this very important, significant experience in our lives. And if we're anticipating being described or experienced by others as old, as dried up, as unstable, naturally there's a part of us that's going to start to feel a little bit tense, that's going to hold something against that. And so what we're going to do today is step away from that image of menopause and look at the full experience of it. So we're going to look at what it is from a different perspective. We're going to talk about why we might feel some of the moods and emotions that we do, and why we experience some of the thoughts that we do. We'll talk a little bit about how that can happen and how to work with that with some really specific practices, very simple ones that you can do in a moment at any given time, little tools to have in your pocket. And we'll talk a bit about what balance during this time actually can mean. So we'll have a little bit of play, we'll have a little bit of practice, and we'll have a little conversation, and then we'll have some questions at the end. So the first thing I want to talk about is balance. And when we think about balance with mood in mind, we tend to think that it's a destination that we get to. Like, I have to find my balance and stay there. And that's not really the way balance works. So mind and mood, our mind and our mood, our thoughts and our body are always talking to each other. So how we feel and how we think is affected by the body. It's also affected by our environment. So when we're in perimenopause or menopause, we have significant influences on both sides of that. Our body is changing quite a bit. There's levels of hormones changing, our physical body changes, lots of things are starting to shift. But our external environment is also shifting, right? We're getting a lot of messages about who we are, about what we are, what we're experiencing. And that input also significantly affects how we feel. It affects how we think about what's happening in our bodies. So when we can start to shift that even a little bit and start paying attention to the messages, not only from what's coming at us, but how we're taking it in, it can change our experience. It can change how we feel and how we relate to our body. When we start to change the narrative, we start to shift how we feel in body and mind. We can look at menopause and the experience differently. So the first thing we want to pay attention to is that we have been conditioned to a large extent to view menopause as a problem. It's a problem. It's a thing it's a suffering experience instead of something that is really intended to be honored. It's a transition. It's a period of moving from one state of being and one stage of life into another. And the changes that we experience in the body, they're very real, but they can be greeted in a way that supports our ability to navigate and move through them and move through that transition rather than suffer through it. Our emotions, our body, and our thoughts are not the enemy. The thoughts and the emotions are not the enemy. They're not the problem. They're part of a bigger picture. They're part of a bigger experience. So menopause, the word itself, reminds us that there's a pause involved. There's something shifting. It's a stage of life that is temporary. It's a window of time. And that duration of time varies woman to woman, body to body. And yet it's not permanent. Although the messaging we get can make it feel like we're suddenly stepping into this place of irrational madness where we're going to be for some undisclosed eternity and will be unbearable to others. When we get that kind of message, naturally there's a part of us that's going to want to shut down and maybe hold that back a little bit, not share our experience. Part of what's happening in menopause is physically, we're shifting from a place and a state of doing and producing and this fiery place in life to a place that's more about being and receiving. We get to soften a little bit and let go of the striving and achieving focus. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't want things or move towards things, but it means that our intensity can soften. We don't have to prove ourselves anymore, essentially. We get to welcome a new way of being in the world. In menopause, we're naturally being invited by our body to pause and reflect, to have a new relationship with how we see ourselves. It's a common time to reassess our values, to see what matters to us, to look back at our life so far and say, what's working and what have I set on hold? What are the things that are next that I'm excited about, that I want to open up to and explore? When we can look at these things from a place of excitement and curiosity and even wonder, suddenly all the symptoms that we experience, the thoughts that we have start to shift, the tone changes. We can view the emotions and thoughts as less of a problem than information. So again, menopause is a period of transition. We're transitioning, the dominant hormones of estrogen and progesterone drop. It changes the way we feel naturally. Our emotions are going to shift a little bit, and that's part of the experience. It's okay. It doesn't mean there's something wrong with you. It means, hey, something's shifting. The reserves, these energy reserves that we had that really helped us navigate this external world, are now being used a little bit more internally. So naturally, we're going to feel a little bit more tired because a lot of our energy is going inward to say, hey, what's happening? What's going on inside? Our nervous system, in this case, might switch on because suddenly our body's behaving in a way that isn't familiar to us. So our nervous system might go, oh, and we might feel more tense. We might feel more tension in the shoulders. We might hold our breath a little bit. And when we do that, our heart rate can go up and our thinking can start to spin. We can get caught in thoughts that go in circles. So this is a really normal process because all these things that are happening, they're somewhat unpredictable. So during this period of transition, our body is changing in ways that can feel alarming. So when we do that, when that's happening, the first thing we want to do is notice the story that our mind tells us about that. Is our mind saying, this is bad, there's something wrong with me, holy cats, I need help? Or another way to look at it might be, can I pause and say, oh, my body's going through something? And soften into that and bring ourselves some kindness. We're going to talk a bit more about what that looks like. So hold there for a moment. So physically, what starts to happen in menopause? We start to experience a lot of physical symptoms, right? Our temperature is dysregulated. We get hot, we get cold. We get really hot, we get really cold. Sometimes really quickly, one after the other. We can get really tired and then be really awake. We can feel a little bit irritable, even sad, and then sometimes even really joyful. And it can feel really like, wow, I'm not sure what's happening. The emotions can feel big, and that's okay. It's also normal. Our energy can shift. We can feel more fatigue. Our sex drive can shift, and our sleep can change quite a bit. So it makes sense when this is happening that our energy to navigate what's happening out there can change also. Now, in a culture that really celebrates youth and productivity and all these things, that can feel really alarming. So suddenly we're finding ourselves at this inner conflict, right? My body's telling me to slow down and rest, but everything around me is not doing that. I'm being told I have to do this, I have to maintain this, I have to keep doing this, I have to push and work, and my life out here hasn't changed, but my body's changing. And so when we have this conflict of messages from the internal and the external, it can feel like we're stuck in a no-win situation. So even though culturally we don't necessarily have a change in rhythm, our body is inviting us to slow down. And so we can do this without having to change our lives drastically, but just noticing, oh, this is normal. Can I be kind to myself in this moment? And start to assess, where in my life do I want to start making shifts? How do I want to change? Not necessarily all the things. You might change the things, but you might start focusing on changing how you respond to them. Can we soften the intensity? Can we soften the intensity of how we talk to ourselves? Our thoughts take lots of different shapes. With menopause, we might be experiencing more thoughts that are called intrusive thoughts, the ones that just pop in and you're like, wow, where did that come from? These are thoughts that can spike anxiety. They can be thoughts of being worried about doing something embarrassing, right? Like, am I going to have a hot flash over there? And what are people going to say? Like these kinds of thoughts. And also, it's really common during perimenopause and like those early stages of menopause to have more thoughts of our own mortality. thoughts of death, thoughts of being ill, because our body's doing unpredictable things. So thoughts of, am I getting sick? Is something happening? Are really common. So when we have these, again, the first step is to step in and say, oh, I'm having that thought. And even just labeling it as that, and then going into the body and softening. We'll talk more about what that looks like, so don't worry. Another type of thought that can be really common is overwhelm. It's really easy to get overwhelmed and start feeling maybe more jumpy, more restless in the body, or feeling more anxious socially. Even sometimes going places that normally had been comfortable, whether it's even just going to the store and being around crowds of people, can suddenly feel more daunting or more unsettling. Increased sensitivity, we might feel more judgmental of others and more judgmental of ourselves. We might start to personalize things more. Somebody might make an offhanded comment, and part of our thoughts might go, they're talking about me, they're judging me. And we can start to feel more experiences of shame or self-consciousness. These are also really, really common. What happens when we have these thoughts is our emotions move, right? Because we're having these changes in our body, the changes in our thoughts, and our body and our mind are always talking to each other, right? And when that happens, our emotions come up, and emotions are ways that the body communicates with us about our relationship to our experiences. So there's no such thing as a wrong or bad emotion. All emotions are really good information. They're not always pleasant though. And with menopause and perimenopause, because of all these experiences and thoughts that we're having that feel contradictory or conflicting in some ways, it's normal to experience emotions like irritability or sadness. If the sadness hangs up for a long time, it might start to look and feel like depression. We can feel a little bit more aggressive, a little more sharp in our tone or our reactivity to the people that are close to us or that we spend time with. We might feel less patient. We might feel more anxious, and we might feel all of these in rapid succession. So we might start to feel like, wow, I'm not sure what's going on, which can actually increase how we experience these emotions and the frequency that they flow through. So now here's the good news. So I know this paints a really grim picture, and you're probably thinking, well, yeah, this sounds just like all those stereotypes of menopause. But here's the thing, it doesn't have to be that way. We start looking at balance as this dynamic process. As we learn to listen to these emotions as guides, we can realize that we're not trying to get somewhere, but we are able to respond in the moment. We can attune to what's happening in the body. We can tune to the emotions that we're experiencing that are showing up and wanting to offer guidance and respond in the moment in this very active dance. So it's this constant attuning and responding, attuning and responding. It's pausing. Menopause is all about the pause. And when we can tune to our emotions, we can actually find a way to, one, accept the experiences that are moving through us, let go of the judgments that we hold about them, and find a state of dynamic balance, one that is moving with these experiences that we're walking through in our lives and in our bodies. So what if nothing is wrong? What if nothing's wrong? The moods and the thoughts are not problems. They're guides. It's information from the body that helps us understand how to pause. Because pausing is a moment, but it can be used in a million different ways. So I'm going to show you a couple of different ways that we can tune into very specific emotions to start tuning into what a different pause can look like to help us come back to the zone of dynamic balance. So anxiety, we'll start with this one because this one is, well, it's one of the bigger, it's one of the more common, and it's one that shows up a lot. So anxiety in the body can look a lot like fear, tension. It can look like insomnia. We can experience it as thoughts that really race. So when anxiety and fear show up, it's one of the ways that the body communicates to us that we're not feeling safe in the moment, that we're not feeling okay. If we're not getting enough good sleep, we're likely to feel this more frequently. The more stuff we have on our to-do list, the more likely the anxiety is going to creep up. Now, we can't always change our to-do lists, but we can change how we respond to the feeling of anxiety and overwhelm that can show up with it. So when you feel anxiety, when you feel that tightness, that slight tightness in the chest, the butterflies in the stomach, the knot in the stomach, our digestion might change, the thoughts race. When we feel that, we can turn towards some 3 really simple approaches. We want to invite warmth. So anxiety can have us feeling ungrounded. It's got kind of a cold quality. So even something as simple as wrapping a shawl around ourselves, really simple strategy, really powerful. Warmth, grounding, and slowness. So what this can look like in practical moments, and again, these are things you can do pretty much anywhere, is first thing is hold the body. Place the hands on the body anywhere. If you're feeling tension, let your hand go there. Hand on the heart and hand around the abdomen is a really powerful gesture. When we hold here, we're pressing on the thymus gland. You don't need to know that, but it's a nice little piece of information. It helps awaken our nervous system to say, hey, guess what? We're okay. And it activates the parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system. If we hold that for 3 minutes, it's a long time in a moment, but there's nothing wrong with hanging out here. We can do this and just kind of hold here fairly easily. If you extend your exhale, and people always say when you're anxious, breathe, breathe, and breathe, and breathe is great. Except what we tend to do when we hear that is inhale. So like, and we actually keep breathing and then we increase our anxiety. What we want to do is really slowly exhale. The body will always take its next breath. You can trust your body to do that. You don't need to worry about your inhale, but we do want to exhale. So when our exhales are softer and a little bit longer than our inhales, it does that same thing that the touching does. It awakens our parasympathetic nervous system. It turns off the fight, flight, freeze response. It's a very slow shift, but it helps us transition from an anxious state to a state where our body feels at ease. And then a wrap, anything that takes a little bit of pressure on the shoulders and covers the heart a little bit. Again, that's a signal to the nervous system that we're okay. The body receives that as a hug or an embrace. It releases a boost of oxytocin in the brain, which is this bonding neurotransmitter that helps us know that we're loved, that we're protected, that we're cared for. It's a way that we tell ourselves that we care about ourselves, that we're okay. So touching, holding ourselves, even just a moment of just, one of the things that I'll do sometimes is just hold and rub my shoulders. And, and this little thing, sometimes people are like, oh, are you cold? Like, sure, you could say whatever you want. No one's going to care if you're doing this. They're like, oh, they must be chilly. And we live, here we are in Minnesota and it's snowing. It's valid. You can do this. You can hold your heart. You can exhale slowly and no one's going to know that you're exhaling slowly, but it will change the way you experience anxiety in the body. The other thing I'm going to share with you is this really fun practice, and it's simple and it's powerful. And this is a practice that if you can do this once a day for 3 to 5 minutes, you're going to notice a difference in your nervous system. This is a practice that I've started doing. I do it personally right now twice a day for 5 minutes in the morning and at night. And it's changed the experience for me and my body. It's called alternate nostril breathing. This practice, it regulates your nervous system, it reduces stress, it slows down the racing thoughts, and it helps our mood regulate. So if we're swinging to this end of anxiety and fear, this is a practice that's going to help us bring us back to center. It's a balancing practice. So I will show you how to do this. There's a couple of ways to do it, but I'll show you probably one of the easier ones. And I will show you this and then share what to do if you're congested or your nose is stuffy too, because there's a trick for that too. So first you're going to take your fingers and make a peace sign and you're going to close them together. So you've got like these 2 fingers, your index finger and ring finger are pointing up, and you're going to place those right between the eyebrows. And then you're going to take your thumb and stick that out to the side. And you're going to use the knuckle of your ring finger to close the left nostril. And the thumb is going to close the right nostril. Yeah. And then you're going to alternate. So you're going to close one at a time. So when we do this practice, we start and end with a left nostril. And we start and end with the left nostril because the left side of the body is the side that aligns with rest. From a yogic perspective, this is the feminine side of the body versus the masculine side of the body, the moon and the sun. But when we do this, this helps regulate the flow of air in the body. It helps cleanse the nose and the flow of the breath, and it helps soften the nervous system. So we're going to do this for a couple moments. So I invite you to go ahead and take your peace sign, close your peace sign, and place that right between the eyes. And then you're going to take a full breath in through the nose, and then exhale through both nostrils. And then gently press the thumb against the right nostril very softly. Don't have to do much pressure. And inhale through the left. And then release the thumb and press the other fingers along the left nostril and exhale out the right. And inhale through the right. And then switch, pressing the right closed and opening the left. And inhale through the left. And switch, exhale through the right. Inhale through the right. Switch, exhale through the left. And as you're doing this, continue in this way and see if you can allow each inhale and exhale to be the same length. Now, if you're congested, you can simply close your eyes and visualize doing this. You can even think to yourself, inhale left, exhale right, inhale right, exhale left. So you can release. Once you breathe out the left nostril, you can stop releasing the hand and then breathe in through both and exhale through both. And just pause and notice. This is a really simple practice that if you do this in the morning and in the evening, it can help with sleep. It can help regulate and reduce the intensity of hot flashes throughout the day because it just helps bring balance into the body. And if you're feeling a particular moment of anxiety, it can be really helpful to bring this in that moment. So we're going to come back to this practice. We're going to shift now to irritability. This is another really common emotion that people talk about or express concern with menopause. And it can look like outright anger. It can look like the furrowed brow, the narrow eyes, the crinkled lip. It can look like that. It can also look like impatience, just short patience. It can look like tension in the body, like tight jaw, tight shoulders. It can look like really judgmental thoughts, like I can't believe that, those kinds of thoughts. And those judgmental thoughts can be directed towards yourself or towards others. There's a really common experience when we start to feel these pressures of our body being incongruent with the expectations that are around us. If we're not getting enough sleep, this is going to happen too. Anger is a really important emotion because it's one of the few that is very outwardly expressed, and it gives us energy. It helps us set boundaries. So when anger and irritability come up, one of the things we want to check in with is, can we soften and pause? The pause that comes with irritability is to pause and cool ourselves. Irritability has a heating quality to it, right? We talk about red hot rage, right? It's got a cooling quality. Do we need to cool a little bit? And from there, we then want to assess what's going on. So to work with irritability, the pause is to cool and ground, cooling and grounding. And we can do that by simply lifting the heart, roll the shoulders back. When we're angry, we're moving forward. We first want to lift the heart and even lift the gaze a little bit. Real simple, and sighing out loud. When we sigh out loud and actually allow a sound to come out, we're actually massaging the vagus nerve, which actually, again, it stimulates our nervous system to say, hey, I can let go a little bit here. It releases a little bit of tension in our muscles. Shaking the arms out, like literally like you're flicking water off your fingertips. It can loosen the tension that's in the muscles that's held in the shoulders and the hands. So these are a couple of real simple things that we can do. And from there, we can assess and express. Assess and express simply means, okay, what am I reacting to? Do I need to set a boundary? Do I need to pause and offer some kindness to myself? What am I really responding to here? What is feeling like what boundary of mine is feeling pressed, pushed, violated in some way? Where do I need to set a limit? Do I need to say no to something? Do I need to ask permission? Do I need to ask for help? What do I need to do here? Assess and express. So lift the heart, sigh out loud, shake it out, and then just check in with yourself. It's a pause. It takes a moment. And now here's another really cool breath I'm going to share with you. And I am actually going to show you a couple tricks with this one because I can't do it the formal technical way. If you look at this lion here, he's got his tongue curled. If you can curl your tongue, you can do this breath perfectly. If you cannot curl your tongue, you're going to do it the other way, which is my way, because I cannot curl my tongue. And that's okay. So this breath is called Shitali. Shitali. And it's a beautiful breath. It's a cooling breath. And it cools the body. It also calms the mind and the emotions. It can lower our blood pressure. And in the moment, it can actually reduce the intensity of a hot flash. It's really quite cool. And this is a practice. I was in Atlanta this summer for a day and walking around outside. I was doing this all day long and it made all the difference. So it's a really simple breath. What you do is you curl your tongue if you can. And if you can't, you just open the mouth just a little bit as though you're going to be sipping through a straw. So you make that motion with that posture with the mouth as though you're sipping through a straw. And you breathe in through the mouth. And the intention is to get as much air covering the surface of the inside of the tongue. You close the mouth and hold. And then exhale very slowly through the nose. So inhale. Hold. And slowly exhale through the nose. We'll do that 2 more times together. So inhale over the tongue, as though you're sipping through a straw, feeling the coolness of the air wash into the mouth, close the lips, hold that for just a moment, and then as slowly and softly as you can, exhale through the nose, very gently. And then one more, in through the mouth, over the tongue, feeling the coolness of the air enter the mouth and close the lips. And then softly and smoothly exhale through the nose. And then release. Just notice how that feels different in the body. What's shifting? One round of this is typically 7 breaths. And if we do this 7 times, typically what you feel, you'll notice the body temperature start to drop a little bit. You'll notice there's a settling quality that starts to happen. It's a very subtle shift, but it also is really quite powerful, especially if a hot flash is just coming on. This isn't going to make it go away necessarily, although I've had that happen. More often than not, it just softens the intensity and the duration of the hot flash. It interrupts it, which also helps soften some of those frustration feelings that can come by. Nope. How do I go back? So the next one is sadness. And there we go. Sadness is the other emotion I wanted to make sure that we touched on today. Because this is one that is really profound. And given the messages that we get about menopause, often when we're feeling sadness with menopause, we tend to retreat and isolate and feel like we have to be in that experience alone. And sadness can look like low energy, a more mild irritability, and more that internal grumbling. It can be a heaviness in the body, with very self-judgmental thoughts. It can also come with intense sugar cravings at times, and this desire for sweetness in our lives, because sometimes when menopause, we don't, the experience of sweetness not there, and we start to, the body starts to crave it in different ways, which then can actually feed the heaviness in the body and the self-judgmental thoughts and low energy, and then we end up in a downward spiral. But when sadness comes in, there's another invitation to pause. And our invitation with sadness is movement, release, but more than anything, compassion and sweetness. But sweetness not necessarily in the form of sugar. I'm not saying chocolate or sugar is bad. I'm just saying we want to be tuned in like how we're using it. So the pause that comes, that's invited with sadness, is about beauty. Can we tune into beauty? Can we find the beauty of the moment? Can we allow ourselves to hold ourselves tenderly? Again, that holding that we did before, but with this intentional welcoming of, oh, I'm here for me. I'm here. We inhale through the nose this time and then exhale very softly. And we'll do a practice that brings all these breaths together and works with compassion. We want to invite opportunities to take the thoughts that are swirling through the mind and allow them to leave the body. So you can do that by speaking them out loud, by writing them in a journal, by talking it through with someone, whether it's someone that you trust, another woman who's also experiencing menopause. You don't need to do this alone. It can help normalize our experience and help us feel less alone. This is really important. When we give voice to our experiences, we realize that we're not alone. And I assure you, any experience you're having in your body, in your moods and menopause, there's another woman who's experiencing them or has experienced them. You're not alone. When we're in this, we can often feel deeply alone and isolated. So giving voice to it is one of the ways that we can show compassion and allow a soft release of the tensions that we're holding. So one of the ways we do this is to really invite self-compassion. And self-compassion is, there's this misconception that self-compassion is about feeling sorry for yourself or being self-indulgent. And it's actually quite the opposite. That when we are self-compassionate, meaning we acknowledge our suffering, we acknowledge our pain with kindness towards ourselves, we suddenly allow the emotions and the experience to move. We don't have to hold on to it. If we can practice even 2 minutes of self-compassion, which can look as simple as saying, oh, this is really hard right now. All we have to do and really own that, and then respond to the way we would to someone else that we care about, we can feel more motivated. The intensity of depression and anxiety softens incredibly. Our sense of caring for ourselves, our self-worth increases, and our resiliency increases. This is a really simple process that our mind will often tell us we can't do. We get some inner chatter that says it's not okay to be kind to ourselves, but we need to. So what we're going to do right now is take just about 5 minutes, 4 or 5 minutes, and bring all three of these together and do a practice. So we're going to start with breath, a little bit of stillness, and weave that self-compassion in, and I'll guide us through some language and self-talk that we can use, and then another breath. So we're going to bring all these together. We're going to start with the alternate nostril breathing. Then we're going to do the stillness, and in the stillness, I'll invite you to hold one hand on the heart and the other around the belly. And if the hand around the belly doesn't feel good to you, that's okay. Place the other hand on top of the hand. One hand, both hands on top of the heart is what I'm trying to say. So you can place both hands on the heart, or one on the heart and one on the belly. And just hold yourself in this gentle embrace. And then we'll close with that Shitali breath, the cooling breath. Now, if you're feeling congestion in the nose or you're feeling a little stuffy, when we're doing the alternate nostril breathing, I'll invite you to just close your eyes and visualize. Imagine a stream of breath. You might sometimes put a color to that. Imagine it coming into the nose and up to the forehead and then out the other side. So in this very gentle U shape. So you can close your eyes and visualize this. Your body will receive a similar experience of regulation and nervous system stabilization from the visualization if you're congested. If you're not congested, I'll invite you to do the practice with us. All right, so let's take a moment and I'll let you just roll the shoulders and shake out the arms. Let's take any tension that's hanging out in the body and let that move. And then let yourself rock a little side to side or front to back until you find a posture and a moment of stillness that feels good in your body. And once you're there, I'll invite you to close your eyes if that feels okay to you. If not, just finding a soft gaze just a few inches in front of you. And then taking a full breath in through the nose. And then sighing out loud. A nice full exhale. Taking another breath like that in through the nose. You might feel the chest open a little bit. And then sigh out loud again, exhaling, softening through the whole upper body. And one more breath just like this in through the nose. And softly exhale with a sigh. Nice. And now taking the peace fingers and bringing them together and letting those two fingers rest right at the forehead of your right hand. And then taking the thumb of your right hand and pressing it against the right nostril and inhale through the left. And switch and exhale through the right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Inhale left. Exhale right. Inhale right. Exhale left. Releasing the hands. Inhale both. Exhale both. And placing one hand on the heart and the other around the belly, or both hands on the heart. Taking a full breath in. And a soft, steady exhale through the nose. Continuing to breathe in and out through the nose if you can, allowing the exhales to be as soft and long as possible. And then gathering your awareness into the space of the heart where your hand is resting. And feeling the warmth of your hand resting on the heart. And you might say to yourself here, as you gently call your name to yourself, right now it's like this. And this is part of the whole human experience. Others feel this too. I'm not alone. May I be kind to myself in this moment. Hmm. Right now, it's like this. And this is part of the human experience. Others feel this too. I'm not alone. May I be kind to myself in this moment. Right now, it's like this. This is part of the human experience. Others feel this too. I'm not alone. May I be kind to myself in this moment. May I be kind to myself in this moment. Just feeling the soft pressure of your own embrace as you deepen the breath. And gently open the lips. Imagine as though you're about to sip through a straw and breathe softly in through the mouth over the tongue. Close the lips and softly, slowly exhale through the nose. Opening the lips and sipping through the straw, feeling the coolness of the air wash over the tongue. Closing the lips. Softly, slowly exhale through the nose. Inhale, sipping through the straw. Closing the lips. Softly release through the nose. And 3 more like that at your own rhythm, at your own pace. Just allowing the coolness of the air to wash over the tongue, filling the body. And softly letting go on the exhale. And after you've completed 3 more, just allowing yourself to breathe softly and steadily in and out through the nose at your own rhythm. And gently scanning the body from head to toe and toe to head and noticing the quality of your experience in the body, the quality of your thoughts. Just noticing. And taking a full breath in through the nose. And then exhale with a sigh out loud through the mouth and tuck the chin to the chest. And then invite a soft grin to form on the lips. A gentle grin that says, yes, I've got you. Right now, at this moment, I'm okay. And then lifting your grin and your gaze back up. Welcoming yourself back into this moment. So this is a little sequence. You can do it anytime, or you can do each of these individually. You don't have to do them together. With menopause, we want to pause. Menopause invites us to pause daily, to practice. And the intention is, can you pause more than 0 minutes a day? Can you intentionally give yourself at least one good pause every day to just exhale slowly? To just say, yes. To reflect, what's happening in my life? What am I needing? What is my body needing? What's important to me at this stage of my life? To be kind to yourself, to invite that self-compassion. Right now, it's like this, and I'm not alone. You're not. There are millions, billions of women that are experiencing what you are experiencing. Let it have voice. Be kind to yourself. Invite gentle movement in. Walking, yoga, tai chi, qigong, and these don't have to be hour-long practices. It can be one long shavasana. That counts. For those of you that aren't familiar with shavasana, it's lying down on the earth with your arms open to the sides, lying down flat. That counts. It's a pause. This is what the stage of life is very much about. And we sometimes get this idea that we have to suddenly continue to be who we were, instead of celebrating who we are, where we are, and who we're becoming at this next stage of life. So this is the point where we get to reframe things a little bit. You get to reframe menopause for yourself. You get to redefine it. There's a woman, Margaret Mead, she's an American anthropologist, and I love this description. She calls it menopausal zest. And this idea of menopausal zest is, she describes it as this rush of energy that is both physical and psychological that we get on the tail end of menopause, that allows us to look at our relationships from a new perspective, to look at our professions, the way we show up in the world from a new perspective, or we get to say, how do I want to be now at this stage of life? Who do I want to be next? Because I've done that stuff. Other people can do that stuff now. Who do I want to be now? Read books. I have some great recommendations that talk about menopause from a position of honoring what this is in our bodies, celebrating what this part of our next stage of life is. You can talk with a therapist, talk with others, explore new interests, and welcome new experiences. Because contrary to this weird idea of menopause as being a dried up old woman, menopause is about renewing yourself, but it's a pause in the middle of our life that says, what's next? So we get to welcome this. Here are some books that I absolutely cannot recommend enough. Crohn's Don't Whine. It's actually a really little book. It's a little sassy, and I kind of like it. And there's this other one, Goddesses and Older Women, which is a little bit more elaborated. There's Haggitude, which is a newer book by Sharon Blackie, which is just a beautiful spin on what it's like to step into this stage of life and reclaim what it means to be an elder, a wise woman. This is what this can be. Midlife Women Rock. Just the title alone tells you that it's kind of a fun, sassy read. Wise Power, Women Who Run with the Wolves is a collection of great short stories. Women at Halftime includes a lot of spirituality into it, very much from the Bible perspective, and it's got some really great inspirational voice to it too. All of these, and this is a sampling. There's so much out there. So explore places where you can receive new input about what menopause is, so that you're not only receiving the messages of old dried up woman, that you can see new information and new possibilities, and read of other women who, experiencing what you are experiencing, are doing it a little differently. So these are some great resources. Another thing that's just kind of fun that I felt I had to share, if you're wanting to look at intentions and setting a new intention for looking at what this new stage of life is for you, I'm offering a full day workshop coming up in January at the Graduate Hotel here in Minneapolis, which is all about clarifying and setting intentions. It's intended for the new year, but also for new everything. So this is a great opportunity. If this is something you're interested in, come and spend a day with me and my dear friend and colleague, Jessica Hope, where we spend the whole day in movement and reflection and community talking about what's important to us and helping clarify what our next step is. If you are interested in doing more meditation similar to what we did today, Insight Timer is an amazing resource. And I have several meditations on there, including a self-compassion practice, which you can see right here, self-compassion break, which is similar to the practice we did. And it's an extended, slightly extended version of that portion of the practice. This is a free app that is available on any phone that you can use and help support your pause practice. So it helps us pause. And with that, I would love to just open up to questions. If there are any questions that are coming up or any curiosities or comments, what's coming up for you?
Well, there are a number of questions. But first of all, I want to say thank you very much. This was just what I was looking for. Not me personally, but for what I asked you to deliver for that joined us today. So I do really appreciate that, because I think that the self-compassion piece and realizing that this change of life is a really cool opportunity that's going to open lots of doors for you if you are open to it. So anyway, okay, so here's a question. I believe that I am in perimenopause at 44. I'm having a hard time with paralyzing thoughts. My mind races and seems to overanalyze situation and takes a long time to make decisions. And even though I come up with the solution, my mind prevents my body to take action. Is this common?
Yes. Yes, you are not alone. This experience of almost paralysis in the thoughts is really common, especially I think in the early stages when things are just starting to really shift, and the body and the mind are kind of going, I have no idea what's going on, and our external world is staying the same, right? Like our obligations, our responsibilities, all that's the same, but internally things are starting to change, and so our fear response, our nervous system kicks into high gear and into alert and says, what's wrong? And when that happens, that's that paralysis. So yes, it's really common. And when that happens, the first piece is to even just say, like we did just there, right now it's like this. Right now it's like this, reminding ourselves that gives the mind this message that this is temporary. It's not always like this. And from there, we can start working with, okay, what's happening? What is it that I need? How do I soften the body to soften the mind? So then we start inviting practices to help. But yes, it's very normal. You're not alone. Thank you for giving voice to that, because I am certain that there are others here on this webinar that are saying, yes, me too.
Somebody else
Thank
did
you for
comment and
asking.
said, yeah, I appreciate the reinforcement that you are not alone. So
Yeah.
what this the breath and the pausing, is that useful at night when you wake up? And I call it monkey mind, but it's when you wake up between that 2 and 4 o'clock hour, and you're making lists, you're writing notes, you're emailing, you're texting in your mind. I believe that is, I hear a lot of friends talk about that negative chatter or that energy that you're. Can you use that pausing breath, or is that too much? And is there another technique?
No, you can. Okay. Yeah, I love that question. Thank you for asking that. So that 2 a.m., 3 a.m. wake up, that's really common. There's a lot of reasons for that. And from a yogic perspective and a Chinese medicine perspective, our body, like that's the liver, like waking up, and the kidneys waking up saying, we got to purge stuff. So it's our detox. So all these hormones that are moving through us, our body's going, hey, we've got a flush of them right now. And we're going, yeah. And then the mind jumps in and does its thing, which is often swirling in negativity. So the breath, the couple things that can be really helpful when that happens is that holding the body. So the hand on the heart and the hand on the belly, and doing that, and the alternate nostril breathing is one that can be helpful in that, even just visualizing it in that case, visualizing it, because that focus of even just thinking and saying, inhale left, exhale right. It gives the mind something very specific to say, language, and also a visual to focus on. And the mind's going to protest for a bit. It's going to take a while. I assure you, the first 5-6 breaths, you're going to be all over the place and you're not going to focus on it. And that's okay. Be kind to yourself and keep coming back to it. That starts to slow and soften the nervous system and helps us come back to sleep. The other practice that can be helpful is even simply counting the breath and doing an inhale of 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4, hold for 4. So this, it's called box breathing. And you can even visualize the breath moving in this box pattern while holding the body in this way. So the holding is a significant part of that because it reinforces to the body that we're safe and it gives us an anchor. And then the visualization of either the alternate nostril or the box can be really helpful in quieting the mind.
Another question is, do you host any seminars for spouses or significant others, partners of women going through menopause? That could be a new job for you.
I don't, but if somebody would like me to do that, I'd be happy to. If somebody wants to host such a thing, I would be happy to create such a thing because I think it's important and it's something that, you know, it's menopause is such a, it's amazing because it's such a universal experience, yet it's also shrouded in such mystery because nobody wants to talk about it. So women go through it in the sort of secrecy, feeling alone, and our partners are going, I have no idea what's going on either. And so everyone's sort of in the dark with this thing that nobody's talking about, but that is very, when we can give voice to it and talk with our partners about it, the experience becomes something very different, and it can become something that can support intimacy actually and help bring partners and relationships closer together, because the relationship, you have an opportunity to re-examine it and to walk through this transition together. Because here's the secret, which I don't know if people talk about much either. Men have a similar experience. They don't have menopause, but they have a life transition as well, and a hormonal shift as well, with adrenals start to shift. And so there's something going on there too that nobody talks about. So everyone's going through things by themselves. So I love the idea. If anyone wants to host it, I'm happy to do that.
Maybe that's on the next step for Oakdale. You know, I mean,
maybe
our role is to be women's advocates, and that also means a healthy life outside of clinical care, you know. So
yeah,
all right, to follow up.
yeah.
A person said, I did the expansion retreat several years ago, and she said, I'm in that picture. And she said it was lovely. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was such a great
Um,
event. It was fun.
yeah, so this person said, this is not a question, but I would be very interested in the partner workshop. I'm grateful that mine listened to one of those with me. So, yeah. So anyway. All right. Well, those are the last of the questions. So let's look at, maybe I got one more. Oh, okay. I am also going through the beginnings of this transition, and I find that I'm pulling away from intimacy with my partner instead of pushing in. And even while I'm craving more interesting intimacy, it is hard for me to ask for it. It's the yin and the yang. Yeah.
Yeah. It's also a really common experience. And I appreciate you naming that, because sometimes it's one of the things that's even harder to talk about, because we can be embarrassed about, well, I kind of want intimacy, but I also don't. And I don't want it in the same way that I used to want it. The touch feels different. And it can be really, it can leave us feeling very self-conscious. It can activate feelings of shame. It can activate also depression and anxiety, like all of those things, because our intimacy, whether we're talking just emotional intimacy and touch or sex, it's such an important part of our lives. And to not be able to engage with our partners in that way, in the same way that's been familiar, can feel like, well, now something's wrong. And all those fear alarms go off and the nervous system kicks in, and we start to feel our relationship is threatened and there's something wrong with us, and we spiral. So the first piece when that happens that I would encourage more than anything is to start first with self-compassion. Like really start there with like, oh, this is what's happening for me right now. My experience of intimacy is changing. Oh, this is really hard right now. Okay. and really be in that space of kindness for yourself. And from there, then there's an opportunity to explore having a conversation with your partner. And you're just saying, hey, this is what's happening for me. And wow, this touch doesn't feel as good, but I still want to feel connected. And so can we work together to redefine what this looks like for us right now? Is it okay to just hold me for a minute? Because I just feel like I need to be held. This is, I feel I extend infinite gratitude to my husband because I've had this conversation with him. And sometimes I just look at him and say, you know what? I just stand in the kitchen, like, I just need you to hold me for like a good 3 minutes. And he looks at me like I'm a little like, okay. But there's this like, at least you're clear. Okay, I could do that. Like, he likes the direction. Right? Like, okay, this is something that's tangible. I can do this. I'm like, all right, that's it. That I just needed some kind of feeling of grounding, stability, and connection. And that's what that looks like right now. So it becomes having conversations, and they can feel really uncomfortable. And so that's where that self-compassion becomes so important, because we want to acknowledge, like, wow, I'm sharing something really vulnerable with someone who's really important to me, who's being affected by something that's happening in my body, but not theirs. And so that dialogue becomes
Right.
it becomes essential.
Mhm. There is a person who's attending tonight that said if she can be of any assistance creating or supporting a menopausal seminar for men, don't hesitate to reach out. So I'm not going to give out that person's telephone number here, but they can reach out to me, and I would give that information. So, and then another person says here, I agree, the ability to verbalize the need is key. So,
Yeah.
and I think that's it. So, all right.
Beautiful.
All right, Patty. Well, I'm
Yeah.
gonna draw the seminar, the event to a close, and I want to thank everyone for
Yeah.
attending. Thank you so much for
Yeah.
all of your great work. It's been awesome.
Thank you. Thank you. And I have here my email address on my website here. If anyone, feel free, if something comes up, I'm happy. Just feel free to send me an email too, or contact Kristen. And
All right.
yeah.
All right.
Thank you everyone for being
Good.
here. And you're
Here.
not alone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, everyone. Bye.